Hi, welcome to session 3, where we're looking at a different chain. In session 1, we learned that it's possible to grow from trauma, but you have to approach it in a different way. You have to approach it honestly, and you have to look at your life in a different lens. Number 2, in session 2, we looked at the fact that we are not God. We're not in control of life, which is very uncertain, but God is, and He is certain. Throughout this series, I'm very keen for us to not sugarcoat it. It's not helpful to anybody to pretend like the world is just one happy place with no problems at all. We know this is not true. There are people who intend evil for us. There is injustice, pain, and suffering in this world. In fact, we have just come back from a medical mission trip to the Philippines where we saw widespread suffering of people who could not even afford basic health care. So often, when we have evil done to us, our response is, I don't get mad, I get even. And that certainly was the context that took place in the book of Genesis. In Genesis, you're surrounded by a bunch of people who repay evil with evil. That's the normal story in Genesis. In fact, there's an account just before Joseph where Leah's daughter, Dinah, who's I guess Joseph's half-sister, gets raped. A terrible thing to happen to anybody. But her brothers find out about it, and in revenge, I guess, they go and they kill every male in that area. Whether they were responsible for it or not. And then they take all the women and children and they destroy all the possessions of the place. It's not one for one. It's amplified. Joseph's story sits in direct contrast to stories like Dinah's rape and the retaliation. What we discover in Genesis and also in our lives today is so often hurt people. It reminds me of this joke, where the boss has a really bad day at work, right? The business is not going that well. So the boss takes his employee in and scolds his employee. What a lousy, lazy employee. You're the reason why we're all suffering as a business. And this guy, he comes back home, he's just been scolded by his boss. And he goes to his lovely wife who has had just a rough day at home, The kids have been troublesome and things haven't been working that well. And the husband comes in, where's my dinner? And starts complaining to his wife. And he's in a bad attitude. And now this wife who doesn't deserve any of that, she's riled up. And she goes, oh my goodness, this is not a good day. And so when the son does something slightly off, she picks on the boy. And she goes, you're a terrible boy. And she, because of her mood, just unleashes it all on him. And this boy, who's at the bottom of the family chain, has got nowhere else for his frustrations to go and all the things that have been lumped on him, he just kicks the dog. And that's kind of how the chain of evil gets perpetuated. But sometimes evil is not an active process. It can also get perpetuated through inaction or passivity. So I've seen men withdraw and abdicate due to work stress. And so they come home and they're like, oh my goodness, I need to watch TV. I can't deal with any of the problems in the home. Don't tell me about your issues. Or they disregard their children and the kind of things that go on in their life. And then that causes insecurities and hurts in the family's life. I've seen women, through insecurity damage, destroy strong, secure relationships only because they are constantly doubting and constantly wondering. That's why in Genesis 43, I love this turnaround moment where it's been evil for evil, evil for evil, and then Joseph responds differently. The brothers have now come back for round 2 of food, and they've brought their brother Benjamin, and they're prepared for the worst because they had a sort of a bad situation before. But when they meet Joseph, they see instead Joseph's grace and generosity. In fact, one theologian says that Joseph's act of grace freed up everybody around that table. His brothers expected any number of bad things, maybe even death. But they got an amazing banquet, a meal that they would not even imagine. You know, Joseph's life offers us a magnificent portrayal of the grace of God as He came to our rescue in the person of His Son, Jesus. So many come to Him like Joseph's guilty brothers, feeling the distance and fearing the worst from God, only to have Him demonstrate incredible generosity and mercy. That is something we can do. We can be the ones who break the chain of evil and pay back. It's because of what Jesus Christ has done. Here's a paraphrase of our key verse. I love how it's paraphrased in this passage here. It goes like this: brothers, listen to me. Let's get this cleared up for the last time. I know what you did, and I know what you meant by it. I know you meant to do me evil, okay? I understand all of that. That was your plan. But God has other plans. He turned the results of your evil intentions into something good. At one time, I did not understand this, but that time is long past. Get this straight. God meant it for good. Joseph could see right to the very end, right to where even this passage comes from, where he's blessing the many nations that are around, where he's preserving the line of Israel through so that it can go through to the Messiah Jesus Christ and preserve a remnant of God's name and people. He could see all of that in his belief in God's vision and dream for him. You know, I heard about some pilots who can see rainbows when they're flying a helicopter or a plane. I always thought that rainbows were half circles. That if you looked out and you saw a full rainbow, you would see a semi-hemisphere or whatever, half circle. But a true rainbow is actually a full circle. And you can only see that if you have the perspective of somebody that's up on a helicopter. And Joseph was like that. I'm hoping that you will see evil in its full perspective. That it's possible for evil to repay evil, to repay evil, to repay evil, and then for terrible things to occur. Alternatively, it's possible to break that chain and start a new circle. C.S. Lewis says that every time you make a choice, you're turning the central part of you, the part that chooses, into something a little different from what it was before. Each of us at each moment is progressing from one state to another. What are you doing with choice in your life? Are you going to break the chain of evil or continue it? And that's what I'm hoping you'll explore today. God bless.